Oh, sorry. I was just taking another look through my book, Embrace the Lead, that I wrote some years ago. Okay, no, I wasn't. It's just a prop to get me into this thing. You know, I meet a lot of people who don't do all that much reading anymore. Back in the day, before we had computers and before we had smartphones and before we had all this other stuff that could distract us, we spent a lot of time reading. Okay, it was a lot of time watching TV too and going outside to play, but in essence, we spent tons of time reading. And these days, I don't meet that many people who read as many books. I do, interact with some business people who read books, but in general, you don't see people who sit down and read anymore for either entertainment or even to learn. And I think that that is really, taking us back. I mean, even today, when kids are having to write papers, instead of actually going and finding reference books, they're looking stuff up online and then they're using that as a reference. And I just don't think that you get the same experience by doing just that as opposed to sitting down and grabbing a book. And, over the years, the last, we'll say, since 2001, when I decided to go into business for myself, I have read a bunch of different types of books. I read a lot of books talking about money motivation, because I've always had this thing. I want to be rich. I've never deviated from that. I want to be rich. Even at my age now, I still want to be rich by the time I'm 65. I'm probably not going to get there, but I'm going to see how close I can get. But I read these books because every one of these people started out pretty much like me. In essence, they weren't rich beforehand. They got into business. They did certain things. They may have had some downs, but then they were able to come back up and they have achieved some great things. So I read those types of books. I read the type of books that talk about the types of people who actually end up being rich that people don't think about. I mean, they're research books. I mean, you probably wouldn't have known this, but plumbers can make tons of money. There are a bunch of millionaire plumbers. And there's a bunch of millionaire auctioneers. Those people, whatever they're saying. I never know if they're just making that up or actually saying something. But there's a bunch of those people who are millionaires because they get a commission based off of the sales of this other stuff. And they don't live like millionaires, so you don't know. The millionaire next door, there could be a guy right next door who may be a millionaire and you may never know it because they don't live, in the big fancy house or they're not driving the big fancy car. There are a lot of doctors that you may think are millionaires who are living the life, but they're not because they're not putting any money away. They're just spending it as fast as they're getting it. So, you have this perception of millionaire. So you have that. Then there are other business books that I read, business strategy books. I have a bunch of those that I read. You have books that are, in essence, business motivation. You can do it, planning and different things like that. Even books that irk me a little bit, like the 4-Hour Work Week. You know what? There's a lot of good stuff in that book, but there's a lot of stuff that just irks the heck out of me. You just want to smack somebody. And I'm not saying I want to smack Tim Ferriss. Okay, maybe I do. But you know what? This is a guy who's achieved some great things. So it's hard to be mad at him for the stuff he's achieved. But there's some stuff that he did that just from an ethical point of view really irks the heck out of me. But still, I picked up some things from it. And so you have those types of books. Then I have the entertainment stuff. I tend to like murder mysteries. I don't know why. And I'm calling them that. Detective stories, whatever you want to call them. And I have certain authors that I really like. And they don't all have to be serious. I mean, I have some serious stuff, and then I have some stuff that's more comical than that, but it's still along that same line, in that same genre. So I love to read those types of books. More often than not, though, I'm listening to those because I drive a lot and I don't listen to music almost ever in my car. I don't listen to the radio because that irks me. So I listen to my recorded books when I drive. And most of the time, I'm being entertained. I've tried listening to a lot of business books in the car, and that just doesn't work. I don't take any of it in. Occasionally, I can listen to a podcast, but most of the time, that just won't get through either. I have done biographies, though. There was a 22 CD biography of George Washington that I thought was fascinating. And so I listened to that whole thing while I was driving. And, nowadays you would convert it to an MP3, But back then, even now I still have a CD player in the car that I can use, but it's just so much easier to put them on MP3 and put them on the smartphone and then listen that way. But I still have CDs, so I will do that. And one of the things about reading that you will find out is that at a certain point, you know a lot. You start to find out that you know a lot more than you thought you did. But there's always another little concept, something that you say, whoa, I hadn't thought about that. And in my opinion, if you're reading a book and you can get something new out of it, even if you're basically covered with everything else, then that book has been valuable, if it's well written. There are some garbage books out there. I mean, we'll just own up to it. I'm not going to mention any because I don't give them a lot of my time. But in general, I think that we as a society probably need to get back to reading more. I mean, even writing. I'm astounded, and I have no kids, but it astounds me how many kids don't know how to write their names in cursive. Are you kidding? How are you gonna sign a check? I know you're saying, well, I don't have to sign a check. There are going to be some times you actually have to write a check. You need to know how to sign it. You need to know how to write your name. You just do. So I don't know. But anyhow, I'm really big on reading. On Goodreads, I'm somewhere around 360, 70 books that I've been able to remember that I've read of all different types that I've cataloged. My niece Crystal is somewhere over 1,000. Are you kidding me? But homegirl, I mean, she has her thing. She must read at least one book a week, and she's always reading. Sometimes it's 2 books a week. Oh, wow. And that's a lot of consumption. She also works in a library, so I guess that helps. But I'm big on reading. I read a lot of blogs. I write a lot. And I think that I'm able to come up with ideas, whatever, because I read a lot of stuff. So this is just my thought. But I want to, ask you guys, do you think that reading still has its place? Is it a book like this? Is it an ebook? Because I have a Nook. I purchase a lot of electronic books, and sometimes you get books for free. I read those late at night when I'm not in the mood to have the big light on. So I read that. I read news stories. I read stuff online, long form biographies, how to do things and whatever. I think that it's important, but let me know your thoughts on it. Anyway, that's what I had today. You take care.